What's up, everybody? I'm here today with chapter number 27 of Book 3 of the Royal Rangers series, Duel at Araluen. We're going to go ahead and get into it. Maddie elected to travel overland to Castle Araluen with her father and Gillen and their men, while the Scandians returned by ship. The two groups set out the following morning, agreeing to rendezvous at the pier northeast of the castle where Maddie had first met the crew of the Heron. The Scandians headed for the point on the river where they had beached the Heron. From there, they would sail back to the coast, turn south, and take the river Seamath inland once more. The Araluens struck out to the west, looking for a shallow spot where they could ford the river. They found a convenient place 7 kilometers away, where the river widened and shallowed. The little force crossed to the south bank once more. The village of Harnell was located on the north bank close to this spot, and Horace sent a messenger alerting the villagers that the remnants of the defeated Red Fox force were sheltering in the hill fort, and directing the village headmen to raise the local militia and take them into custody. "It'll take at least a week for them to get the militia together," he said to Gillen and Maddie. "But I don't think the Foxes will go anywhere in that time." "Pity you couldn't have got them to lend a hand sooner," Maddie remarked. He glanced at her. "We didn't have time. The Foxes were pressing hard on our heels. On top of that, they're not really a trained fighting force, and they would have been badly outnumbered by the rebels." Maddie nodded as she thought of the local militia, mainly farmer hands and laborers, unskilled and poorly armed with hoes, pitchforks, and axes, facing the mercenaries. In times of war, when the militia was assembled, they were usually equipped and then trained for several weeks by the regular army. "Will they be able to handle them now?" she asked. Horace smiled. "The Foxes are injured, and they're unarmed. They'll be hungry and cold as well. I imagine they'll be quite glad to be arrested, particularly if it means they're fed." They rode on, heading south through the forest, then emerged onto cleared farmland on the second day. Maddie enjoyed the companionship of her father and Gillen. For his part, Horace continued to look at her with some wonder and a certain amount of pride, shaking his head from time to time. He hadn't seen a lot of his daughter over the previous 3 years, and he was impressed by her quiet self-confidence and her skills. Will had taught her well, he thought, but then, who better to teach her? Gillen did most of the talking. He was eager to hear details of how Maddie had infiltrated the Red Fox clan's meeting and discovered that Damone was their leader. She related the details with the Rangers' typical self-depreciation and understatement. Rangers didn't boast, Horace realized. Gillen quizzed her about the secret tunnels and stairways inside the castle as well. "I'd always heard there were secret passages in the castle," he said, "but I never met anyone who had seen them. I actually thought they were just a myth." "They're real enough," Maddie told him, "and just as well they are." "How did you find them?" he asked. "I went through the old blueprints and plans of the castle. It was Uldred's idea, actually." "Uldred?" her father interrupted. "The head librarian?" "Yes," Maddie replied. "He told me to look for discrepancies in the dimensions of places like the lower dungeon rooms. When I did, I saw that the lower cellar was several meters shorter than the one above it. I hunted around and found a hidden doorway in the end wall. It opened into the room where the tunnel entrances are located." "Simple when you think of it," Gillen said, shaking his head. "I should have done that myself." "And how many of these tunnels are there?" Horace asked, his mind going ahead to consider the problems that would face them when they attacked the castle. I found 3. One is the way in and out of the castle. It goes under the moat and emerges in a clump of trees halfway down the hill to the forest. The second leads to the concealed stairway that goes up the south tower. The stairway is a series of ladders hidden behind a false wall. That was how I managed to reach Mum and make sure she was all right. The third one is the most useful for us now. It leads up to the gatehouse, where the mechanisms to raise and lower the drawbridge and the portcullis are located. Horace nodded thoughtfully. As you say, that's going to be very useful. But the gatehouse will be well guarded, that's for sure. Sure to be, Matty agreed. But nothing I can't handle. Particularly if I've got a dozen or so wild Scandians backing me up. Horace rubbed his chin. Yes, I imagine a dozen wild Scandians might cause absolute havoc in there. He smiled grimly as he pictured the scene. Don't think I'd care to be a part of the garrison if that happened. It'll be decidedly unhealthy for them. And serve them right, Gillen said, a note of savage satisfaction in his voice. Handy people, Scandians, Matty said. They were amazing the way they smashed into the red foxes. They went through them like a battering ram. They're incredible warriors, sure enough, Horace said. Man for man, they'd beat any soldier I've ever seen. He looked around. There was a small stream running through the fields to their left, its bank lined with trees. He pointed to it. We'll make camp there for the night, he said. Tomorrow, we'll rendezvous with Hal and his men. The Scandians were waiting for them when they reached the little dock early the following afternoon. The land party had forded the Seamath River at a convenient point 2 kilometers to the east. Hal and Stig strode along the river bank to meet them as they rode up. Been waiting long? Horace asked, after they had exchanged greetings. Hal cocked his head to one side. We got here after sunset last night, he said. Horace smiled ruefully, rising in his stirrups to ease his backside, aching after hours in the saddle. Looks like that's the quicker way to travel, he said, nodding in the direction of the neat little wolf ship tied up at the dock, its heron figurehead rising and falling with the wavelets, and giving the ship the appearance of a living creature. More comfortable, too. Hal nodded. We made good time, but then we had plenty of rowers, he said. So what's the plan now? Horace cocked one leg over the saddle bow and slouched comfortably. We'll take a look at the castle, he said, and see if anything dramatic is happening. All going well, we'll get into position to attack tomorrow morning. And the attack plan? Hal asked. Matty knows a secret tunnel into the cellars of the castle. From there, a hidden stairway leads to the gatehouse. She suggested that she leads you and the other herons through there, and you take the gatehouse. Then you can let the drawbridge down, and we'll come in and start whacking Damone and his men. Sounds like a good idea, Hal said. Nice and simple. Not too much to go wrong. Just as long as you and your men can clear out the gatehouse, Gillen said. Stig turned a wolfish smile on him. Oh, we'll clear them out, never fear, he said. You just make sure you're ready to come riding in and take all the glory. What about Wolfbiter's crew? Hal asked. Do you have anything special in mind for them? Nothing special. They'll come with us and knock heads together once they're inside the walls. They're good at that, Hal said. Horace nodded. So I'd noticed. Now, let's go and take a look at the castle. We've got spare horses, if you'd like them. Hal hesitated. They'd be cavalry mounts, wouldn't they? Horace replied, straight-faced, knowing the Scandians' aversion to riding. Well, we didn't bring any gentle old ladies' palfreys with us, he said mildly. Hal considered the offer, then shook his head. We'll walk, he said firmly. Give me a minute, and I'll fetch Thorn. The 6 of them set out a few minutes later. Hal, Thorn, and Stig on foot, and Matty, Gillen, and Horace walking their horses to let the Scandians keep up. They made their way up the slope and stopped as they reached the crest, where they had a clear view of the castle. Smoke was pouring from the south tower, close to the top, billowing out of windows and arrow slits. I don't like the look of that, Horace said, the worry evident in his voice. Mum's flag is still flying, Matty pointed out, but her father continued to look concerned. It's upside down, he said. That's a distress signal. She did that days ago, Matty told him, to warn me they were under attack. And look, the smoke is coming from the 8th floor. The 9th floor is still undamaged by the look of things. But her words did little to lessen Horace's anxiety. All the same, he said, I don't think we'll wait till tomorrow. How long will it take you and Hal's men to get in position? Matty estimated distances for a few seconds, then replied, We'll circle down through the trees. I don't want Damone to see us. Maybe 2 hours? Do it then. Stig, can you run down to the ship and get the rest of your crew up here, please? And tell Jern to bring Wolfbiter's crew up to join us. Stig set off back down the hill at a fast jog. Horace continued, Gillen, fetch our men up here as well. Gillen nodded. What do you have in mind? Horace answered, his eyes never leaving the south tower, with the long banner of dark smoke trailing from it. I think I'll let Damone and his men know we're back, he said. That might distract them from whatever they're doing in the south tower, and it'll give Matty and the Herons time to get through the tunnel to the gatehouse. Gillen wheeled Blaze and cantered down the slope, following in Stig's footsteps. Unconsciously, Horace eased his sword in the scabbard a few inches, making sure it was clear and ready to draw. How will we let you know when we're in the gatehouse? Matty asked. We'll need some kind of signal, won't we? Horace finally looked away from the burning tower and regarded her calmly. We'll see the drawbridge coming down, he said. That'll be enough. And that's going to bring us to the end of chapter number 27. Thank you all for listening, and I'll see you next time in chapter 28. God bless, and have a good one.